monitoring fine. Just a minute. Good.
And you're down for like whatever, right?
Yep.
Cool.
I was wanted to ask you about like rules stuff yesterday, so I guess we should clarify. I'm bound to follow whatever the fuck whatever the NFLD rules are. You to interpret what those rules supposed to mean.
You have the F up on speech drop?
Yeah, I'm gonna put it in right now.
Cool.
Right now, 1. The max has been 11.
Alright. That doesn't change anything, I was just curious.
Yeah, has not exactly gained the traction. People have gone back and watched. So round 2 had 63 people already go back and watch. So
Not bad. Is this on your Nickelodeon channel?
yes. Well, until we get those monetization. I don't have 1,000 subscribers, so I can't monetize. But
You know what? I was having an ad yesterday about putting ads in the prep time. Trying to get that ad money. Oh, what's the speech drop in?
Oh yeah, there's no markers. It's capital N as in Nancy, W, like lowercase w, capital L, lowercase m as in mother, 8, lowercase p.
D?
P,
P.
yeah. Is anyone not ready? Starting time. Now, first is inherency. We have no rules of engagement now. Johnson 18. The federal government lacks a framework for action that qualifies an active war in cyberspace. There's a document where it's like, this is our list of one of these things, and we're going to learn a war said former director of national cyber policy of the National Security Council. That's the plan. The United States federal government should direct the U.S. Cyber Command to adopt the principles set forth in the Tallinn manuals as rules of engagement. PACA 14 explains. The manual, a document applying existing law to cyber warfare, represents the role that countries with economic cyber attack make causes damage or death may also retaliate cyber warfare through conventional weapons. Cyber operations cause mere inconvenience, irritation, or not qualified as preconditions for the use of force. Specifically, this is important because it says if our critical infrastructure is attacked, we can and will retaliate. Advantage 1 is soft power. U.S. soft power is low and decreasing now. Paraso and Reglime 18. This American-led structure of global order may be disintegrating. The rise of China and other powers, along with the U.S. president who lacks legitimacy both domestically and internationally, signifies widening the cracks of American global leadership. The plan strengthens U.S. leadership, shows commitment to international law where other powers are backing away, and models behavior for other countries. Thomas 17. Norms are valuable because they reflect the international community's expectations, set standards for responsible state behavior, and allow the international community to assess the activities and intentions of states. While proposed norms are all voluntary and non-binding, the recommendations are an important step forward in developing an agreed normative framework. China and Russia have backed away from the 2013 agreement that says international law applies online. Institutionalization of norms through international rules is often a step in enabling a norm cascade. And U.S. decline will produce massive destruction, not a new global power structure. Brzezinski 04. And rapid termination of American hegemony will precipitate global chaos. International anarchy would be punctuated massive destructive, unguided progressive decline would have a similar effect. And soft power is key to solving a variety of international harms. Kurt Linzig 05. Broad decline of soft power has many implications. The NIU settlement will make it easier for terrorist groups to recruit threats such as disease, human trafficking, drug trafficking can only be managed through forms of multilateral cooperation that depend on America's ability to persuade other nations. Terrorism cannot be defeated by force alone. And soft power produces global stability and is key to solve climate change and thus extinction. Stanley 07. Soft power is invaluable for keeping potential adversaries from gaining international support, winning the peace, and convincing allies to share the international security burden. Soft power is critical for addressing most security threats the U.S. faces today. Environmental degradation, global warming will have negative security implications as well. Soft power is critical to secure the international cooperation that will be necessary to address such threats. Going to advantage 2. Transparency. The U.S. is not transparent regarding cyber warfare. Zetter 15. While the government will continue to engage in cyber operations, fall short of being transparent, the public learn more about government policy on cyber operations from official release. The plan is the best way to increase transparency. Egan 16. Increase transparency more for a number of reasons. Facebook relative vacuum public state practice concerning cyber activities. Others have sought to fill the void. The most comprehensive of these efforts is the Tallinn Manual Project. And transparency and signaling reduce tensions and uncertainty. Reuter 11. Militaries are necessarily secretive about cyber capabilities by clarifying military doctrine and cyber warfare and by increasing transparency. States can better signal their intentions to potential adversaries and reduce fear and uncertainty. Doctrine holding that offensive cyber capabilities should only be used in response to kinetic or cyber attack might help reassure adversaries that weapons are not being developed for hostile uses. Uncertainty causes escalation. Vitalman 09. Norms guide how states behave in cyberspace. There's a lack of common understanding regarding cyber attack that causes uncertainty that could escalate conflict. If states have different interpretations of what is permissible in cyberspace, a common understanding of cyber war will also guide how states can deter cyber attacks. And cyber war escalation causes nuclear war. Miller 17. Nuclear forces rely on information technology and space assets for warning, attack, raise satellites, or computers, and one state may disrupt the other's ability to use nuclear weapons or release space down in the minds of commanders. As a result, major cyberspace attack to play nuclear lose or lose and play such pressures going the horrors of nuclear exchange. Nuclear war causes extinction. Woodwell 86. Survivors of the immediate effects of the weapons will emerge into a radioactive environment that's perpetually dark and frozen. We seem difficult accumulating the resource required for survival. Water would be frozen, plants and animals would be dead, agriculture would be paralyzed, none would survive. Advantage 3 is critical infrastructure. Critical infrastructure is vulnerable to cyber attack now. Gilgan 18. Our critical infrastructure is targeted for persistent cyber attacks. Adversaries have tested resilience and found significant weaknesses. The nation state with desire to disrupt our critical infrastructure can do so at any time. The same capability will be available to non-aligned groups. It is impossible to directly respond to attacks on critical infrastructure. Carter and Sophio 17. Hyperbole attacks of open policymakers eyes to the potentially catastrophic consequences of cyber attacks on critical infrastructure. The economics of cyberspace made it impossible for government agencies with finite resources to respond to all of the attacks targeting U.S. industry, which often have to provide infrastructure. And we need cyber deterrence to prevent attack. The plan provides it. White House 18. We need to improve our deterrence. Deterrence requires clear international norms and clarity among potential aggressors. The U.S. will impose consequences. We have to make that clear in advance for that to be deterrence. Attack causes societal collapse. Sebastian 09. Officials have emphasized the catastrophic effects of catalysts in which government agencies fail to coordinate after a cyber attack and subsequently collapse. Cyber attacks against financial sectors and physical infrastructure can severely impact the national economy and disturb energy resources like oil and electricity for an indefinite period. Impact. Millions die. Guttural 12. The consequence of going without power across the U.S. would be devastating. Backup generators would rely on fuel. Sick people would have no place to go. Grocery stores would run out of food. Deliveries would cease. The economy would cease. People would die by the millions. Nuclear plants would fail, causing meltdowns, loss, and human life would reach the worst of nuclear exchange scenarios. Next is a theory underview. First argument, Afghans and RVIA turns fairness and theories one shot kill the naked and lose on every aspect of the debate, but when on a shred of offensive theory, this incentivizes them to read theory a lot because it's an easy way to win and disregard the rest of the round, compensate the Afghan and RVIs, so either side can win on theory, not just the neg. B, RVIs don't deter the neg from running theory, they only deter them from running bad, frivolous theory. They know they can't win on if there's legitimate abuse in the round. It should be easy for them to win on theory, so the RVI doesn't even change anything in these instances. C turns education, forces the neg to clash and be able to defend the theory shell instead of just kicking it with incentivizes theory education. Second, prefer reasonability. A turns fairness theories an unfair time trade-off. The F has to answer every single shred of offense under competing interpretations, then the neg can just kick the shell. Reasonability checks back against time sucks. B, again, the reasonability doesn't deter the neg from running theory. It only prevents them running bad, frivolous theory where there's no legitimate abuse or loss of education or fairness. If there's legitimate abuse in the round, the neg should be able to win on reasonability. C turns education competing interpretations causes an undue distraction from the rest of the debate along with the time trade-off it creates, which is bad for case and critical education. 3, potential abuse is not a voting issue. A turns fairness, there will always be the potential for abuse no matter what. The F is if the neg has access to it as a voting issue, it explodes the grounds. B, since theory is one-shot kill, there should be a higher burden of proof for abuse to compensate for fairness. See if neg can prove abuse, then they really can't access any of their theory impacts, such as loss of education or fairness. This is the same standard the app is held to for proving a link between their plan and their impacts. Open for cross.
Can you explain what this Tallinn manual is?
Yeah, so it's basically a document outlining rules of engagement and applying international law to cyberspace. It says that any attack that causes any cyber attack that causes major damage or death means that a country can retaliate, but they can't attack otherwise. Okay, and the offense that I'm garnering off of it is because if our critical infrastructure is attacked, we will retaliate, and we're letting everyone know.
Okay, so that is the case. Functionally be ending like preemptive offensive operations.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's basically saying like, yeah, we can't attack you unless you do this to us. Okay. So like, in the case that you do this to us, we will attack you.
Okay, so we can only be functionally retaliatory or defensive cyber then.
Yeah, basically, and yes.
Meaning that you constrain all sorts of actions that are offensive in nature.
I wouldn't say like that.
Offensive but not retaliatory.
I think retaliatory like can also be offensive. I think like there is overlap, but basically yes. I mean, if I understand your question.
Yeah, very good. As it pertains to like your what specific like sector of critical infrastructure do you isolate as being like most important to be protected by the plan?
I don't. I'm just protecting critical infrastructure in general. I think that it's impossible to directly respond to attacks on critical infrastructure and directly protect them. That's Carter and Sophia 17. So we need to have cyber deterrence, and the way to do that is the plan.
Okay. As it pertains to like this soft power scenario,
Yes.
any particular reason why soft power is to be preferred over, say, like hard power mechanisms?
I'm just saying like soft power is good. I don't say anything about hard power.
Okay. As it pertains to this inherency, you're saying that we have like no current rules of engagement?
Yeah, so right now it's basically the Wild West of cyberspace where we are just kind of attacking randomly, and so is everyone else, and we don't know what we can get away with. Other countries don't know how far they can push the boundaries in regards to the US, and that's dangerous because it causes uncertainty and escalation. So we need to actually have a clear set of norms so we tell everyone, like, if you're just doing data theft, that does not permit us to like strike you back and take down your power grid, but like if you attack our critical infrastructure, we will respond.
Cool. Can you explain this RVI underview to me?
Yeah, I get an RVI because it turns fairness and education and...
Like, is this RVI predicated on me kicking the topicality?
What?
Is the RVI only predicated on me kicking a topicality?
No, I can make an RVI if you don't kick T. It just says I can make RVIs.
Okay. I'll run some prep time. Okay, I'm dropped in. I have a minute 58 left in prep.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
All right, so the order is going to be 2 off. Then we're going to do case a little bit out of order. It's going to be kind of like this RVI underview, first and foremost, when we get the case. Then it'll be rest of the case kind of straight down.
So you just want to do the RBI stuff first, and then order, and sorry, then the case in order.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everyone good with that order?
1 second. Case, 2, 3.
First off, it's got to be topicality and word actions. Ace one's going to be interpretations, rules, and action are distinct. Rules prescribe action for to guide behavioral actions will be doable, unambiguous activities. It's going to be Marsh and Olson in 2009. Rules prescribe appropriate action, not be assumed that rules dictate behavior. Action is governed by prescribes a double action and unambiguous distinctions made between rules and behavioral realization. Our rules provide parameters for action rather than take specific action. B is supposed to be a violation. The plan shifts the rules that guide Cyclops' actions. However, this is extremely vague. It doesn't try specific instances of a particular type of action that's going to be used to protect critical infrastructure or prevent complex catastrophe. The topical version of the AF could have been topical versions that could have like protected critical infrastructure could have been just like implementing like some sort of a technology by some cyber command, or could have been just like engaging in some sort of like hacking operation. But none of these particularly come out of the affirmative. C is supposed to be the standard. Argument one is going to be stable link round. Regarding the implementation of specific courses of action is get a stable link round. Small rule case to give the affirmative the ability to shift the result of the rules based on favorability. The AR destroying fair engagement, enforcing the negative to read positions that are as generic as possible, hindering a meaningful education. Argument two is going to be limits. Will the specific action critical to prevent the explosion of small ass? Really change the way existing actions could be conducted. It's necessary to maintain fair division on the topic's already been half biased number of possible actions cybercrime could take. Next, argument is going to be defects T. They will try to saying that their rules lead to actions later on. However, this will be FX topicality. FX is an independent voter issue. First, there's no limit to the number of steps they can place honesty on, so research is infinitely speculative. Second, looking at the plan impact on prevents the infinite AF explosion, killing a specific education, making the bright line impossible. Third, they prove small action is enough to solve harm, which means you presume negative. You just justify the resolution. Next argument is going to be that of extra T. Even if the AF claims they increase action level to protect critical infrastructure, but many other actions are increased are not to protect critical infrastructure, but rather just do like allyship, particularly with their soft power, like whole scenario there. This is an independent voter because it destroys predictability, gives the AF access to advantages beyond the scope of the resolution. Next is going to be that of bidirectionality. Allowing rule shifts makes the topic bidirectional, legitimizing the burden to increase rules that ramp down the material impact of Cyclone. Your interpretation makes it perfectly possible to increase rules that would constrain cybercrime actions. Boy, did they bite into that last standard right there. Even in the cross-examination, they said they're going to be functionally ending all of the offensive cyber operations that cybercrime engages in, for one. But two, they're functionally going to be engaging into constraining cybercrime activity towards only retaliatory or defensive. Functionally means they're definitely biting that last standard. Next is going to be the voters. NFALD tools dictate T is an a priori voting issue. It's also just a rule of the game. You got to vote on there. It's also going to be a priori issues in the fairness in education, competing interrupts already into that's best for fairness in education, key to prevent judge intervention, and establishing equitable norms of engagement. And we said that reasonability is always going to be bad because it's functionally arbitrary opponent judge intervention, so always benefit the most privileged debaters in the round. Next is going to be disad offensive posturing. Current DoD operations model of prioritized DoD network and offensive potential is increasing the homeland infrastructure. Defenses are zero sum with the superiority according to Crowther 2017. DoD has three main permissions: defend DoD networks to defend U.S. homeland and provide a cyber support to military operations. DoD has a common force of 160,000, although it sounds like many. This represents the infinite resources. This points towards the need for permanent amounts of allocation of cyber resources. The vast amounts of expense internet will actually solve the DoD workforce policy maker. It says the DoD should actually expand their cyber force mission set. The DoD would current disaster not circulating military missions and cyberspace violates economic force. DoD does not possess the resources to help with the private sector. The only area the military predominates is the military operations. Next. Offensive superiority is essential to the overall U.S. military might. Infrastructure resiliency is sufficient to ward off an attack, according to Lawrence Cavill et al. In 2015. Offensive equivalence means the ability to much less of an enemy's computer. The enemy can inflict on the U.S. equivalence may be enabled to U.S. to large-scale cyber brutality and civilian force. Offensive superiority may be the best way to able to discourage escalation. If the United States need the capacity to degrade enemy military computer systems faster, more completely than far longer than it can actually degrade the U.S. Require U.S. offense capabilities to decide decidedly better. Superiority needs the military networks more secure than those of U.S. adversaries. Hard to achieve as an advantage in the civilian realm. The U.S. should prepare for cyber war using military targets, which stressing superior offense capabilities give the U.S. influence over desire of adversaries to expand to civilian targets. Next, unequivocal military strength is key to resolve power vacuums and U.S. retrenchments. This explodes power struggles and escalates the global war. The liberal world order, where central talents come from the ambition and dissatisfied large, medium-sized powers overwhelm the existing strategic order dominating the United States and its allies, then hegemony the regions. If they were to accomplish this aim at establishing hegemony, they would return to the condition in the end of the 19th century. Great powers were clashing the fertile ground for wars. An autocratic rulers will and liberal democrat would have to be careful. The greatest chance comes from the military power of the United States. The inherent stability of unipolar and republican in this dynamic United States is willing to be able to play its principal grantor of the order, especially in the military realm. Order depends entirely on American power. The weakness will encourage more aggressive revisionism by dissatisfied power. And only the United States has the capacity to unique geographical just provide for global security. There's no stable balance of power without the United States. We also want soft power and spark power with limited value in converting with raw military power. A couple implications here. This functionally says that you sequence hard power of the disad over soft power because we have specific words as to why you sequence the hard power. We have specific words that specifically say that you sequence always hard power over soft power and spark power. Probably means we're always going to be winning a risk of a link turn against like the whole soft power scenario there. But let's go on to like this RBI underview. Against like this whole argument about the RBIs, first we said that RBIs are inherently illogical. Like the concept of a reverse voter issue doesn't functionally make sense. It just means you don't vote on a particular sheet. But next, we said that ultimately that RBIs ultimately create a chilling effect that prevent negatives from actually being able to ever read theory. This ultimately prevents us being able disincentivizes the checking of abuse. 3, we say that 1, our theory sheet isn't privileged. There is clearly not topical within this concept debate. 4, we should never actually vote on an RBI unless we actually kick the sheet. Like RBI should really be constrained if it's clearly unambiguously a time stack. But if we even win like a risk of an extension of an XT or FXT violation, then we say that we're going to be going for compatibility for 1, but 2, that's going to be independent reason why you wouldn't just vote us down. It would just mean that we wanted to argue substance debate instead. But 3, next argument is going against this RBI sheet is going to be that potential abuse is in fact a voter issue. The reason being is because not evaluating that means the affirmative is always going to be a moving target. It could always like new link out disads. But second, we say that you always prefer to competing interpretation of reasonability. We give you a clear disad to reasonability on the initial T shell, which makes the indication that you always going to be benefiting the most privileged debaters in the round. Next, let's go on to the case debate proper. Against soft power, go ahead and cross-apply cards 1, 2, and 3 from the disad. It clearly says that offensive superiority is essential to actually warding off attacks and protection of our allies. Probably means we straight turn the soft power scenario there. And going on to their scenario articulations about critical infrastructure. We say there's actually like no solvency for like critical infrastructure in a world in which the United States is actually like reducing its capability to actually like engage in like preemptive attacks and actually reducing the ability to actually like defend its infrastructure in that way. We would say that only restricting its defensive operations will ultimately actually reduce the deterrence effect, functionally meaning that they would straight turn the critical infrastructure advantage.
Okay. Ready?
Yep.
Okay. Starting now. All right. So let's talk about the disad. So basically, your link is that I decrease superiority of hard power.
Yeah.
How do I do that?
By constraining actions.
Okay. So we need to be able to do preemptive strikes to have hard power.
I'd say so.
Okay. Can you describe to me some of those preemptive strikes that we're doing right now to keep our hard power?
Yeah, like recently, like we've engaged in like preemptive like hacking and trying to like circumvention of like North Korean systems as an example.
Okay, are we actually taking down their critical infrastructure though?
We haven't successfully taken that critical infrastructure now.
Okay, so then how does the plan actually affect that?
I mean,
like what kind of hacking are we doing to North Korea right now?
Like just in mostly it's like intelligence gathering, just
intelligence. Okay, cool, awesome. And so intelligence gathering, how does the AF play into that?
I'd say that by preventing us from engaging in like offensive operations to where it's purely retaliatory, you're preventing our ability to engage in those operations. In other words, you're saying we can't hack unless North Korea hacks us first.
Okay. All right. And what was the warrant for hard power being key to soft power?
Particularly the Kagan card, pretty much like.
Yeah. What's the warrant in that card?
Yeah, the liberal world order has always been like only been like upheld through like unequivocal military strength, and that unequivocal military strength is what allows for soft power and hard power to even have any sort of functionality.
Okay. What's the uniqueness regarding U.S. hard power right now? Like, are we on a brink scenario?
I would say, yeah. Particularly the uniqueness card indicates that we are currently ahead in terms of hard power and cyber. But because of like the limited resources that we actually have available for cyber commands, and limited resources we actually have invested in the cyber, there's going to be a brink scenario on that question.
So I'm just trying to understand like how our hard power, like even independent of cyber, is on the brink right now. Like what other power is going to overtake the U.S.?
Like Russia and China, particularly in their cyber capability.
Russia and China, okay. And their cyber capability. So is this just about cyber hard power, or is this about conventional hard power and military capability too?
Predominantly like cyber.
Okay. So this is just about like cyber hegemony.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. And let's go to the Okay, yeah. So on my theory underview, you say that potential abuse is a voter, otherwise it can be a moving target. Could you explain that argument?
Yeah, potential abuse just says that we need to be able to like hold the affirmative to something, because even like potential abuse kind of like makes you like a moving target to where we're not able to predict what you're going to be able to do in the 1AR, and that really skews us out this round.
Okay. I'm gonna take some prep. Oh, and you didn't read the last like cards on case, did you?
No.
Okay, cool. Okay, that was 2 minutes and 9 seconds. Saving. Uploading. The order is going to be the disad. And then the theory underview from the 1AC. And then the T-shell. Advantage 1, advantage 2, advantage 3. Everyone good? Starting time. Now, first response on the disad is the uniqueness overwhelms the link. There's no bring scenario here. Our military is supreme. They give no reason as to why cyber hegemony is key to over other hegemony and conventional weapons. They only say their disad is about cyber hegemony, not conventional hegemony. Our conventional hegemony is so much stronger than other countries. The U.S. spends $700 billion a year on its military, whereas China only spends $250 billion on their military, indicating that we have more than double the strength of China. And they say that China is the power that's going to rise. And then Russia only spends about $150 billion on their military per year, indicating that even combined, if China and Russia teamed up on the US, we have a better military than they do. That means that our hard power is supreme. Also, I want you to extend the soft power prevents war and causes global stability, because other countries don't want to go into war with the United States if we have good relations with them, and economic interdependence also solves for this when it makes war with China not going to happen. Next argument is no link. I don't increase homeland defense measures. I increase deterrence. I literally tell you in my advantage 3 that it's impossible to protect critical infrastructure with homeland defense measures, which is why we need to have deterrence, which is what the plan provides. That means that there's no link here, because their link scenario says that the homeland defensive measures are zero sum with offensive measures. I don't increase homeland defensive measures. measures, which I even tell you in the 1AC. The next argument, no length, the AF doesn't constrain intelligence gathering. I don't constrain intelligence gathering whatsoever. That's just hacking into a system and stealing intelligence. I constrain offensive operations that take down infrastructure, which is what the affirmative does. They articulate no specific link to the affirmative in this instance, meaning you're not going to be voting on the dissent. Go to the theory underview from the 1AC. Your first response to RVIs is that RVIs are illogical, but you give no warrant for as to why RVIs are illogical, meaning that you probably aren't also impacting out education and fairness. Next, you say that prevent negs from reading theory. No, I want you to extend my subpoint B on RVIs that says it only disincentivizes you from reading bad theory, not theory in general. If there is legitimate abuse or loss of education and fairness in the round, you should be able to win on your theory, and then the RVI doesn't even matter. You did not respond to this argument or how it interacts with your voters of education and fairness. Next, you say that there should only be a voter if you kick the theory. No, I get RVIs even if you don't kick the theory, because you could be frivolous even if you're not kicking the theory, and we need to check back and prevent education and fairness. You're not impacting out any of your responses to education and fairness, which is what you say are the most important issues in this round, so I want you to extend that I get an RVI. Next, go to reasonability. You just say cross-apply competing interpretations. You don't impact out competing interpretations of education or fairness to give warrants as to why this is true. You just say it prevents judge intervention without actually explaining what the impact of judge intervention is, or giving a warrant as to why competing interpretations prevents judge intervention. I impact out reasonability to fairness and education, which you don't respond to or clash with any of my warranting as to why reasonability is better, which means you should probably be preferring reasonability, but I'm going to win on competing interpretations anyway. Next, go on to no potential abuse. You say potential abuse is not a voting issue because I would become a moving target, but you fail to give a warrant in cross-ethics as to why I would be a moving target with potential abuse was not a voting issue. I impact out potential abuse to education and fairness, so I want you to extend this. Go to the T-shell proper. First argument, we meet even if rules are not actions. The plan is an adoption of rules. The adoption of rules is the action the plan takes, not the rules themselves. This is reasonable because it also substantially changes the way Cybercom operates. Second, we meet the rules of engagement increase actions by Cybercom. If we get attacked, Cybercom will now strike back, which is an increase in actions. 3, we meet rules ensure freedom of action in cyberspace. Refer to the card I'm about to read. 4, counterinterpretation. Actions by U.S. Cyber Command can include, but are not limited to, directing and designating operations. U.S. Cyber Command mission statement 15. U.S. Cybercom plans, coordinates, and conducts activities to direct the operations and defense of U.S. DoD information networks and prepare when directed to conduct full military spectrum cyberspace operations in order to ensure U.S. freedom of action in cyberspace. 5 is counter standards. A topic specific lit. This definition is from Cyber Command itself about what actions it can take and what constitutes an action in terms of what Cyber Command does, where it's the next definitions from a document that has not even contained the words cyber or military, so it's both non-contextualized to the AF and the topic. This turns both education and fairness. B is ground. Since directing operations is a large part of what Cybercom does, the AF should not be restricted from accessing that ground. Turns fairness. C is predictability. This is literally the entirety of Cybercom's mission statement, which is the most predictable and stable locus of what to hold the app to for what kinds of actions Cybercom can do. It also ensures that I'm not a moving target, which means potential abuse is not a voting issue. There is no definition more predictable than this. Yours, on the other hand, is from an obscure Norwegian article about the logic of appropriateness. 6, we meet the counterinterpretation. Rules of engagement are a way to direct the operations of DoD information networks. Go to their counter standard of effects topicality. First response. Multiple steps are relevant. The same results are key for ground and abuse. Even if it takes an extra step, if it's not used to spike out of DAs, Ks, or links to your CP, as long as we are in abuse, if it's not an issue. 2, effects topicality is inevitable. It's inevitable. Plan passing Congress and then being implemented is an extra step, meaning that this is something that would always occur. 3, no bright line. There's no bright line between what would constitute next step or what would be part of normal means, meaning that as long as our plan ends up being topical, we are ahead on this question. 4, not abusive. 2 or 3 extra steps is not uniquely encroach on negative ground, but offers the opportunity for new process CPUs or DAs. As a result, 5, not violating the resolution. We don't violate any words in the resolution. Just says something should be done. We don't violate anything in the resolution if it takes an extra step to do. 6, this resolution uniquely allows for effects topicality in the words and or prevent complex catastrophe. There's no topical version of the affirmative that is not effects topical that prevents complex catastrophe because there's no plan text in a vacuum that can do so. Go to extra T. 1, best policy. Extra topical planks allow us to find best policy resolutions justified as long as part of the policy package. 2, inevitable. As always inevitable, something will be extra topical. Specifying any agent enforcement, even saying normal means, could be seen as outside bounds of the topic itself. 3, real world. Members of Congress use writer for bills all the time. This is still real world and what allows us to create better policies. Skip 4 and 5. RVI. If they can't win their theory shell, it was frivolous, meaning you vote AF for education and fairness. Extend this RVI. New responses by the neg impacting out when RVIs to education or fairness would be new, meaning you can't evaluate them. Skip all of that rest of this stuff and go to case. First on case, extend advantage 2. Advantage 2 of transparency goes cold hard conceded. This has a nuclear war scenario, meaning you probably vote there on the extinction impact. Right now, even regardless of the disadvantage, because the disadvantage doesn't really impact out to extinction. Next, go on to soft power. They just cross-apply their disadvantage. I've already answered the disadvantage. Cross-apply my responses there. And also, cross-apply my responses to that. The disadvantage is the only response to soft power. meaning that if I take out the disadvantage, the responses to soft power go away. On advantage 3 of critical infrastructure, you say there's no sovereignty that you can engage preemptively. You don't have any evidence or cards as to why preemptive strikes are key to protecting critical infrastructure. I tell you deterrence is necessary, and I also you concede that the plan provides deterrence. So I solve.
I'll run the remainder of prep. Alright, so the order is going to be an overview that you can either fill on the topicality sheet or on a new sheet. Up to you.
An overview on T?
Yeah.
Or just an overview on the...
Yeah, the overview is going to be addressed with T.
Got it. Okay.
Then we'll go to that RBI sheet. And then it's going to be T.
Sorry, say the order again?
Yeah, sorry. So it's going to be an overview. Then we'll go to the RBI sheet. Then T.
Got it. Okay. Alright.
Everyone good? Judge, you're going to be voting negative in today's debate off the topicality shell because we promote the most fair model of debate in the round. And this is particularly true. This is particularly true in the context of the affirmative conceding two topical versions of the affirmative that were actually within the violation shell, as well as just being behind on much of the standards debate. That's why bidirectionality and limits are particularly going to be problematic in the context of the way the affirmative has engaged them. But first, let's go on to this RBI sheet, which is going to be their primary mode of offense against the T shell. They try to say they're always going to be winning an RBI because it prevents us reading frivolous theory. One, we already said our theory isn't frivolous, so we're going to be collapsing to it. But two, we said that ultimately we're still going to be winning on this concept that allowing for these types of preemptive RBIs is going to create a deterrence effect that scares people away from being able to check abuse in the round, which means you're never going to get them access to an RBI there. They try to make their speculations that we don't impact out competing permutations to anything, that we don't actually tell you like why, based on an impact, reasonability is bad, but we tell you that reasonability promotes one judge prevention, and we impact that out to benefiting the most privileged debaters in the round with the initial 1 and C shell. It's a clear impact of those cold conceded, meaning that you will cold conceded, and furthermore, that also means you're going to be evaluating potential abuse because competing interrupts is a question of norm setting and a question of whether and how we actually engage in like the best model of debate. With that in mind, you go ahead and cross-apply all this offense onto our topicality shell as an independent reason as to why you're going to be voting on T. Let's go to topicality proper. First, in a world in which they have completely dropped or disadds to reasonability about benefiting privileged debaters, you will always be defaulting to a competing interpretations paradigm, and you're going to be basing this on like what creates the best norms in debate. But furthermore, you can also be extending across as an a priori voter issue, and it's bounded by the rules of the game. They can make a bunch of arguments about FX and extra T and things of that nature, but those are not something that they have access to under the rules of NFA-LD. You must be topical at base value under the rules, and only articulations as to like why our interpretation of the rules are bad are just a no-go in LD. LD is an event that is guided by clearly defined rules. You must follow them based off the invite of the tournament as well. With that in mind, let's go on to like the top of the topicality interpretation level. They make a bunch of we meets on the topicality that early aren't we meets. First, their first we meet is that even if rules are not actions, plan is an adoption of rules. Adoption rules allow them to take more action. That's the FX topicality right there. That function. Go ahead and call it FX topicality that we already preempt. Next, they already try to say that we meet because rules engage with increased access by SciComm. No, opposite. They literally constrain any sort of offensive operation. That's not a we meet to the interpretation for one. And if anything, that's another instance of FX topicality. The other trying articulations that they meet because they ensure freedom of action in cyberspace. But again, another instance of FX topicality. They're not taking a direct action to actually ensure a free movement of action, And next, they try to say counterinterpretation. They don't meet this counterinterpretation. Look at what their card says. It said it gets a cyber command like it coordinates and directs the operation to the prayer in which it can conduct full spectrum military cyberspace operations. They constrain full spectrum military space cyber operations, meaning that they do not even meet their counter interpretation on the sheet. Even if you want to look at reasonability, they're not reasonably topical in the world. They do not actually meet their counter interpretation. As it pertains to like their articulations about like ground, as it pertains to like their articulations about top specific like ground predictability and the counter they don't get access to these counter standards in a world which they do not even meet their counter interpretation. The point at which they do not meet either our interpretation or their counter interpretation. In a world where you're defaulting to a competing interpretations paradigm, meaning you can probably just pull the trigger on the topicality right here, right now. They don't meet either interpretation in the round. Next, they also try to make these articulations as that like how like they are like the most predictable, but we said an action that decreases action inherently as opposed to increasing actions as the resolution calls for is inherently never going to be predictability. We didn't access to a term there. Next, with that in mind, go ahead down to their arguments about like FXT. They try to make articulation. Go over the other older responses to FXT. They try to say that ultimately that FXT is inevitable, and that there's really like no problem actually getting in multiple steps, and that there's like no risk of offense there. But the problem with their answers as it pertains to FX and extra T is that they concede two topical versions of the affirmative and the violation that we say could have resolved all the offense, could have given them access to all their arguments without actually triggering a risk of the offense in our standards debate. They actually go ahead and extend across like hacking operations could have been a topical version of the affirmative that could have solved, and they again across to implementing new technology could have been a topical version of the affirmative that could have addressed this. I mean that you're still be extending across the FX and extra T violations as independent voter issues due to the fact that they dropped topical versions of the affirmative that actually could have resolved these problems. Again, no new responses to them. The QAR they would be completely new. Do not let them get up here to the next speech and actually engage in that. They also try to make articulations as to how they allow for like the best type of policy through FX and extra T, but we say that ultimately they're not the most real world. The point at which like there's no like they're not really like real. There's better ways to be a real world. The point at which based off our disad, Cybercommand is engaging permanently offensively now, meaning that a real world type of policy would have been one in which actually increase actions offensively inherently. Next. As it pertains to like the standards debate, extend across stable link round, we say that this was key to actually ensuring that like small rule changes couldn't actually occur based off affirmative accuracies, and that we were forcing negative represents that are as generic as possible and hindering like, meaningful education for one. But two, it also creates disads that are inevitably like no link. They try to say that they're going to go hard for like no proven abuse in the round, but we said that disad was clear proven abuse in the round, right? Take a look at their no links to disad. They're saying they're not increasing like homeland security, and they're like saying like not resolving for like intelligence sharing. They're only constraining offensive operations. All those are clear instances of proven abuse in the round. There's a clear differential like loss of fairness within this debate. And with that in mind, you can also go ahead and send across the bidirectionality standard, which actually goes cold conceded, which says that you're making it certainly impossibly negative, and you're functionally leading to things where our disad never really gets access to in today's debate.
Okay. I have a little under 2 minutes. from the 1AC. Well, quick overview, which you can flow just like on top of the AF proper. And then theory underview from 1AC, and then G. Everyone ready? Starting time now. Overview. Extend the 1AC. They've conceded this. I have offense in round. If I win T or if I win the RVI, you automatically vote F. Next, go to the theory underview from the 1AC. You just keep restating this argument that RVIs deter you from running T in the first place and that your T is not frivolous, but these are non-responsive to the arguments I make in the 1AC and extend in the 1AR that it says that it only disincentivizes bad theory. If there's legitimate loss of education or fairness, you should be able to win, and the RVI doesn't matter. You haven't responded to how this impacts out to education or fairness. Next, people collapse to frivolous theory all the time. That doesn't mean that just because you're collapsing to it, that I don't get an RVI. Next argument, go to reasonability. You say that you did impact out competing interpretations of judge intervention, but you didn't warrant how reasonability causes judge intervention in the first place, meaning that you don't actually have a warrant or analysis as to how you actually access the impact of judge intervention or helping privileged debaters. I explained how and why I am reasonable in the 1AR and will continue to do so in this speech, meaning that there's probably no judge intervention. Extend the rest of reasonability. Go on to potential abuse. Extend this argument. They don't actually respond to the argument that I make in 1AR that says you can already hold me to a stable locus and there's no reason why potential abuse should be a voter issue. That means that unless they have proven abuse, I should be winning this round. Go to the violation. Extend the first we meet. Their only response here is that, oh, this is effects topical. No, the first we meet is not effects topical. The plan means we adopt a set of rules. That adoption of a set of rules is an action by Cyber Command. It's adopting the rules. That is an action. You've conceded this. You just said, oh no, this is effects topical. And even if it were effects topical, I already said that there's no impact to effects T in my 1AR. You then respond to that by saying, oh, you concede topical versions of the affirmative. You are effects topical. Okay, sure. I concede that I'm effects topical. I never said I wasn't. I just say there's no impact to effects topicality that impacts out to reasonability or to education or fairness. You have conceded this. I want you to extend that and that these are not voting issues. Go to the bidirectionality standard. I cross-applied my argument on the we meet that says while I do constrain some actions, I also increase other actions like hackbacks. That's from the second we meet. That means that I'm still increasing actions. Go to my counter-interpretation. Even absent my counter-interpretation, I should be winning because there's no violation to their interpretation in the first place. But I do not violate my counter-interpretation because I don't constrain full spectrum operations. I increase counterstrikes, and I also cross-apply from the disad that I don't constrain any sort of military operations or any sort of intelligence gathering operations as well. Also, I do meet my counter-interpretations as Cybercom directs actions and how they take actions. That means that the adoption of rules is a direction of actions. I meet my counter-interpretation, and there's no violation here whatsoever. They concede all of my counter standards. I want you to extend those. Means I'm probably winning on the standards debate. Then extend all my responses to effects T and extra topicality, saying that there are no voters there. Go to the part where they talk about the rules and how the rules say it must be topical. The rules don't say anything about extra topicality or effects topicality, and I tell you that there's no impact to these things, meaning that the rules do not say that I should lose. Extend the RVI. That means that if you lose on this theory sheet, you should be losing the round. Evaluate on reasonability. I'm reasonably topical because they concede that I protect critical infrastructure. That's advantage 3 that goes cold, hard, conceded. I want you to extend that there as a reason why I'm reasonably topical.
disservice by grouping a lot of the we meets. And basically, your answer to we meet is like their effects topical, rather than saying like no, you don't meet, right? You can just be like, no, an adoption of rules is still just doing rules. It's not an action, right? And you don't really do that. You're just like, no, it's effects T because eventually it's adoption of rules. But they're like, yeah, we're effects T anyway, right? So they spend a lot of time giving a lot of good offense in their second speech of why being effects topical, not too bad. What I think you ought to be doing is just going for the top level part and be like, no, you don't meet my interpretation. Here's why your interpretation is bad. If you're going, and you do this in your overview, so I don't know why you aren't doing it on the flow. You're like, if we're going for models of debate, here's why your model of debate is worse. Here's what it allows, all these kind of things. And you do that on the bidirectional part, but you don't like dig in deep on it. Like you should have just been like, you know what? Whatever all this other effects, extra T's bullshit, like I don't care about that. Your interpretation of debate, right? Even if you do meet your inter, right? It is bidirectional, and here is all the reasons why it links and causes an explosion of limits, why it kills stable link around, and you have that aspect of it. But that needs to be the focus of your T going on this T argument, because I don't think that the app really grapples with the bidirectional part. The only reason I see them getting out of it is when they're like, I meet your inter, and my understanding is that if they meet your inter, they obviously can't be bidirectional, because your inter can't be bidirectional, or else you link to your disadvantage, right? So I think that's the biggest lexus for me as to why I think this argument, at least for the app, works a little in their favor. I will say that this RBI thing was kind of stupid. I don't really prefer to do this stuff. Your first thing should be on the RBI is like, your first question should be, is there a difference between rules, violations, and theory, right? Because if you're going for T, you're not saying like, theory, judge, you should look at topicality as a voting issue. You're like, no, it's a voting issue. So is there a difference between T and theory in LD specifically? In other forms of debate, there absolutely is. Like T is a theory argument. In LD, not so much. So your question should be like, are they different? If so, what is the difference? Like if I run T, does this RBI stuff apply to my T, or is it just for condo, bad, or all these other kinds of arguments, right? Because then you're like, all right, like, right, I'm not using, like, you do get an argument on theory, this argument isn't that. Boom, done. You give like a solid explanation of why there's a difference between the two. This stuff is kind of like nonsense. And they just wasted a lot of their time doing this preempt that like you don't even biting into it. At least if someone does that to me in front of me during this, I'm more willing to buy that theory is distinct from topicality in LD. So that was just my advice on this. And also the potential abuse of like, you're kind of doing it twice. You're just talking about potential abuse in the abstract versus just like potential abuse on regards to T. Just do that debate on the T, right? Like, because it just seems like you're talking about like potential abuse when it comes to a theoretical theory argument that hasn't even been introduced. And I think it's better to be like on T, potential abuse is a voter, because then it ties in with predictability, ties in with ground, ties in with limits. Right? That's what I think. Not that like that wasn't cross-applied, you both did, but I think that doing it on a separate sheet of paper, talk in a theoretical abstract versus just the TI one seems kind of weird to me.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.